Hello viewers. Bishop Patrick Wooden, age 69, looks straight into the camera and says, she doesn't need invitations. She needs deliverance. Those 7 words landed like thunder. Within hours the sermon clip spread across feeds, and a gospel world that had been whispering for years found its whispers turned into a public verdict. What pushed a respected leader to speak so plainly, and what does it mean for the woman at the center of the storm, Andria Johnson? Andria's story starts in pews and prayer rooms, a child whose voice seemed destined for sanctuary speakers and Sunday morning television. She was raised inside ministry life, where talent mixed with expectation. Singing was never merely a hobby, it was a calling that wrapped itself around her identity. Early applause opened doors. But with each standing ovation she also picked up the weight of being not just a singer, but an example. That tension between gift and expectation would shadow her career. Her rise felt cinematic. The nation met her raw voice on stages where vulnerability read like prophecy. Audiences fell in love with how she could make gospel feel like a confession. Yet fame was ruthless in its demands. As her profile grew, so did scrutiny. Private battles, with drinking, mental health, and the constant pressure to perform spiritual perfection, began leaking into public view. Clips, arrests, and candid interviews turned personal pain into headlines. The world watched, but few saw the quiet nights that followed the applause. For years, industry insiders say, tension simmered beneath the smiles and handshake photos. Small clashes at joint events, terse backstage conversations, and disagreements over ministry ethics quietly built a record of friction. Fans only saw the polite handshakes. Leaders saw patterns. Then, in the space where private counsel should have settled disputes, social media became the courtroom. Past remarks resurfaced. Private messages were leaked. Suddenly every misstep multiplied. And for Bishop Wooden, a man known for diplomacy and caution, the patience he'd shown for decades finally wore thin. When Wooden finally spoke from the pulpit, he did more than express concern. He named incidents. He referenced interviews where Johnson questioned mentorship structures, he pointed to social posts that escalated into public feuds, and he said private admonitions had been ignored. For Wooden, these weren't isolated missteps, they formed a pattern that threatened the credibility of gospel leadership and the safety of younger artists watching from the sidelines. His claim was blunt: influence without accountability is dangerous. Those words split the room. Some patriots cheered. Others felt the blow was unnecessary and public. The backlash was instant and messy. Supporters of Wooden rallied, saying at last someone had named the behavior many whispered about. They argued that the church's moral standards cannot be sacrificed on the altar of celebrity. But Andria's fans fought back just as hard. To them, her outspokenness was courage, a new generation refusing to be silenced by tradition. They pointed to her frank confessions of struggle and recovery, arguing that transparency deserves compassion, not condemnation. The debate spilled into news segments, podcasts, and church small groups, a culture war wrapped in gospel robes. Behind the public firestorm were tense, closed-door attempts at reconciliation. Multiple sources report that Wooden first reached out privately, hoping to resolve the matter without a spectacle. When those avenues failed, the pulpit became his final option. Insiders tell of meetings where mediators warned both sides about reputational damage and possible legal entanglements, a conversation so heated it was said to influence Wooden's decision to go public. The private rooms held decisions that the microphones could not. What happened? There could change more than reputations, it could reshape how gospel institutions handle conflict. Andria's response was measured. Rather than lash out, she posted a statement about grace, growth, and commitment to ministry. She did not, publicly, answer every accusation. That restraint sent its own message, wounded but unwilling to surrender the narrative. Meanwhile, observers watched for the next chapter, an upcoming mediated meeting that insiders say could signal reconciliation or an irreversible split. The stakes feel operatic: 2 influential figures, clashing visions for ministry, and a community forced to reckon with the cost of celebrity in sacred spaces. This conflict is not merely gossip. It is a mirror held up to a changing gospel culture, a test of accountability, generational power, and what the church expects from its stars. Wooden's declaration and Andria's endurance have become a lesson in how influence is exercised and corrected. For some, this is a righteous stand. For others, it's a public shaming dressed as discipline. Either way, the consequences will be studied in pews and boardrooms for years to come. They both have audiences who will not forget. They both carry histories that will not disappear. And while viewers argue in comment sections and congregations debate in Sunday schools, one question hangs over every heated reply and quiet prayer: can a church culture that made her a star also be the place that helps her heal? They didn't just live the headlines, they became a test case for the future of gospel leadership. What comes next will decide far more than careers. What came next would shock everyone.